Welcome to Wawa Sandwire. Today we're talking about DAP Youth's strong opinions regarding the proposed Urban Renewal Act. And specifically, their really pointed critique of Siong and Akmal Solah's recent stance on it.
That's right. We're going to unpack DAP Youth's perspective on what they see happening with this, well, pretty crucial piece of legislation.
Looking beyond just the headlines, trying to understand the view from their side.
Exactly. It's quite interesting, actually, how DAP Youth sees the government's decision to temporarily halt the second reading of the act. They've been very public about applauding the Housing and Local Government Ministry for this.
Yeah, they see it as the ministry showing it's willing to listen to feedback.
Precisely. From their perspective, this isn't, a setback or a sign of weakness. Instead, they're framing it as proof the unity government is genuinely open to building consensus.
Which they contrast with previous administrations, perhaps.
That's the implication, yes. They see it as a chance for more MPs, more stakeholders, to actually weigh in, refine the bill, and ultimately, in their view, better safeguard people's rights through that process.
So a positive spin on the pause. A sign of maybe democratic process working.
That's certainly how DAP Youth portrays it, a chance to strengthen the legislation, not weaken the government's resolve. It's about getting it right, they argue.
Okay, but then this is where their tone shifts quite dramatically, isn't it? They draw a really sharp contrast between that approach and the actions of MCA President Siong and UMNO Youth Chief Akmal.
Oh, absolutely. This contrast is, well, it's pretty central to their whole argument. DAP Youth basically says, look, other government MPs were engaging, trying to improve the bill, offering suggestions.
Constructive engagement, is that the idea?
Exactly. They claim these other MPs were focused on the substance, but Siong and Akmal. DAP Youth asserts they only really piped up with strong opposition right at the very last minute.
And DAP Youth sees that as what? Not genuine concern.
Their interpretation is that it was less about the bill itself and more about aligning with Paracatan National, stirring things up, creating political noise rather than contributing constructively. That's the core of their critique here.
And they make a pretty specific claim to back that up, right?
Right.
About prior engagement.
They do. DAP Youth claims that neither Siong nor Akmal had actually offered any, constructive suggestions or engaged in detailed discussions with the ministry before this sudden opposition.
So the implication is that it came out of nowhere.
Well, that's what DAP Youth suggests, accusing them of jumping on the issue late in the game just to gain popularity or maybe create a bit of chaos.
That's a strong accusation. Political opportunism, essentially.
That's the frame. It definitely makes you pause and think, doesn't it, about the timing of political statements and what might be driving them beyond just the policy itself.
Okay, let's get specific. DAP Youth really went after Akmal's argument for a 100% agreement threshold for these urban renewal projects. They used some strong language, calling it extremely absurd.
Yes. Akmal was the phrase reported. They painted it as completely out of touch with reality, totally unworkable. And they didn't just say it was absurd, they tried to show why it was absurd.
How do they illustrate that?
They used a pretty straightforward example. Imagine, say, a residential block or area with 1,000 households. If Akmal's 100% rule applied, just one single household objecting could stop the entire project.
Even if the other 999 wanted it.
Exactly. Even if 99.9% were on board. DAP Youth argues that would basically paralyze any significant urban renewal effort, especially in older, denser areas. One person gets an absolute veto over the entire community. That's their point.
And they brought up a past case, didn't they? Residency Kerinci.
They did. They highlighted that in the Residency Kerinci project, they only managed to get 92.4% agreement. Not 100%. And because they couldn't get everyone on board, the government ended up having to use the Land Acquisition Act to make it happen.
So DAP Youth is saying, see, 100% is impossible in practice, and we already have mechanisms for when consensus isn't total.
Precisely. And they draw a key distinction here. The Land Acquisition Act, they point out, is actually a much blunter instrument. It gives the government very broad powers. The whole point of this new Urban Renewal Act, according to DAP Youth, is to create a more structured process with safeguards for residents before you even get close to needing something like the Land Acquisition Act.
So they're suggesting Akmal is either missing this point or deliberately ignoring it.
Well, they pose the question quite directly. Is he ignorant or just pretending not to understand? They accused him of using this 100% idea as a slogan, basically, to mislead people and stir sentiment, rather than engaging with the legal or practical realities.
Hmm. They also criticized his use of the One Razak Mansion example, saying it was misleading.
Yes, they felt he was using that specific case to paint all urban renewal negatively. And DAP Youth emphasized that, actually, an 80% agreement threshold has been used as a reference point since way back in 2012, under different governments, too.
So there's precedent for not requiring 100%.
Definitely. That's DAP Youth's argument. Projects like Residency Kerinci went ahead without it. So for them, Akmal demanding 100% now is not just impractical, it contradicts past practice. They use that phrase, slapping his own face.
Meaning his current stance makes past actions look inconsistent or hypocritical.
That's the gist, yes. A very strong way to put it.
And again, they contrasted this with others. They mentioned Pakatan Harapan MPs offering actual suggestions.
Right. DAP Youth highlighted that other MPs were apparently proposing concrete improvements. Things like maybe tiered thresholds depending on the situation, better protections for tenants, proper appeal mechanisms, focusing on the most rundown areas first.
So constructive ideas versus, in their view, just blocking.
That's the picture they paint. Which leads them to ask, if others could offer solutions, why didn't we Siong and Akmal? DAP Youth frames their actions not as genuinely representing concerned residents, but as creating noise, possibly in coordination with Paracatan National.
It sounds like DAP Youth sees this extending beyond just this one bill. They mentioned broader political alignments.
Yes, they definitely broadened the critique. They pointed to things like We Siong occasionally hinting about MCA leaving Barisan National, and they noted Akmal's perceived closeness or public appearances with Paracatan National youth leaders.
So suggesting their actions on this bill might be part of a larger political strategy.
That's the strong implication from DIP Youth. They basically said if we Siong and Akmal want to join Paracatan National, they should just be open about it, rather than, as DIP Youth put it, pretending to speak for the people while potentially pursuing a different political path.
Wow. So they're contrasting what they call the government's sincerity for reform
with what they label as Akmal and MCA's political opportunism. It's a very stark contrast they're drawing.
And their worry is that this noise could actually hurt real reform efforts.
That seems to be their underlying concern, that this kind of destructive hype, as they see it, distracts from the actual substance of legislation and potentially derails progress on important issues like urban renewal. It certainly makes you, the listener, consider the different layers operating in political debates. Policy, personality, party strategy. It's all in the mix.
Absolutely. This look at DAP Youth's perspective on the Urban Renewal Act, and especially the critique of We Siong and Akmal, well, it gives us a lot to think about. It shows how complex these discussions about policy and political maneuvering really are in Malaysia.
It really does. It highlights how the same set of events, the same piece of legislation, can be interpreted so differently depending on who you ask. It really underscores the need to, look beyond the simple headlines and try to understand the arguments, the history, and maybe the underlying motivations too.
Definitely food for thought. Is it genuine policy concern, or is it something else playing out?
A question worth asking, always.
Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.